Why boys and men are floundering, according to a relationship therapist, Terry Real. While they're not floundering, they're being attacked. He's one of the guys who does the attacking, and he's going to admit it, guys. Now, I want you guys to take a good look at this guy's age. He's not Gen Z. He's not Gen Millennials, right? He's an old man like me. So let's knock it off with the generational thing, right?
In this conversation, Daniel actually wrote about it for the New York Times Magazine in a piece called How I Learned That the Problem in My Marriage Was Me.
There you go. He's saying, I'm the problem because I'm a guy, because he's going to admit he's not going after the person who's uh, responsible for it. He's going to go after the men each and every time.
And Daniel learned that because, unlike a lot of couples therapists, Terry takes sides, tries to get to the truth of what's going on, what's behind a couple's behavior.
Well, actually, he's not trying to get behind the truth because when he takes sides, it's not random. It's not like I took this guy's side this turn, then this woman's side the next turn. He's always going to take the women's side. So this guy is anti-truth and anti-male.
I started off, my beat were couples on the brink of divorce that no one has been able to help. These women would drag these guys in, and I would lean in and tell them, she's right, you're wrong. This is what's going to happen if you don't shape up.
Well, there you go, guys. This is why couples therapy is abusive, man. She's right and you're wrong. He doesn't even know what the story is. He doesn't need to know. Now, that's why the women drag the men in. Because the women know they're going to get support from little go boys like this. They know therapist takes their side. They know the therapist is there to side with them and get the man in line. The simple fact is, these women are going to divorce these men no matter what. Because it's the women who do the divorcing. They get to the point where they're tired of the man and they dump him. So all this is heaping on abuse, as well as just slowing up the process a little more. This guy is your enemy.
This is what you could get if you do. You're a good guy. This is terrible behavior. Let me reach in and help you, man. I mean,
This is terrible behavior. What behavior? You haven't described anything yet. You're a good guy, but you don't know your place.
you can do better than this. And the men would say, okay. And the women would just fold over and start to cry. They had dragged this poor sucker. The record so far was 8 therapists, and not one person backed up the woman and confronted the man. Not
That's a lie. That is a lie. Check out my other videos concerning this. There's one where, let's see, I'll bring it up, guys, real quick. Just a minute. This one is called Psychologist Finds Out He's a Part of a Hate Movement, where he finds out that the industry, which is what it is hostile to men. He's a therapist who said, hey, you ladies are openly hostile to the men that come to you for therapy. You can read that if you like, guys. But so for this guy to tell an open lie that no one supported the women shows you what a lowlife he is.
not one. We're taught not to in therapy school. Not only are we not taught how to, we're actively taught that you don't do that. You don't
Yeah, you don't take sides, dude. They're both equal human beings. So let's hear both stories.
tell truth to power under patriarchy.
Under patriarchy. Right. Okay, so he's a feminist. Feminism is a hate movement towards men. This is exactly who is in control of your mental health if you let them.
Terry's been doing this for more than 40 years. He calls his approach relational life therapy, and he's written several best-selling books about it. And that whole time, he's kept a particular focus on men. Because
He's wrote several books. So this guy is making money off of misandry. This is what guys are like. They sell out their fellow man for fame and fortune. That's why his wife hasn't left him yet. He's kept her bribed. He says, "That's all right, honey. I know you'll leave me. You want to leave me, but I've got these stacks and stacks of male victims set up to keep you happy."
Because for Terry, the things he sees men struggle with, from the most mild problems to the most extreme behaviors, it all stems from something fundamentally broken about the way our culture defines masculinity.
Masculinity is an anti-male term because women, these guys never talk about femininity for women, right? So it's a slave collar. Now, notice he says from the smallest problems to the worst behaviors. He doesn't say the smallest problems to the largest problems. You have to understand what they leave out in their language. What he essentially admitted to is that men don't have big problems. They just got bad behavior. These guys don't know their own place.
So today, Terry Real tells me what he's learned about masculinity that drove him to break the rules of therapy.
What he's learned about masculinity, he's a man. He doesn't know. I know your motivations, dude.
He'll tell me how his own childhood showed him that our current models of masculinity don't work and what it will take to build new ones. And during our conversation, we talked a lot about what it means to be a man right now. Because to Terry, despite his 40 years with hundreds, if not thousands of clients, he says his mission of reaching men has never felt more urgent.
Yeah, men are like saying, well, maybe I want something better for myself. He said, we got to stop that. This is, here, I'm going to define what a man is. A man is an adult male, period. He's past puberty. He's become sexually equipped, sexually active. He's grown. That's it. There's nothing else to it.
Stay with us.
What are we in? Like, not even 5 minutes. We've got a half hour to go. Get past the music.
Like, hi, I need help with my marriage. So how do people end up in your office?
Yeah, I like to say my books appear
Well, the women dragged the men there. He's admitted that.
under pillows all over America. Here, honey, if you want a little action tonight, read this book. So, yeah.
Yeah, see, this is what this guy's all about. He's not about mental health. He wrote a book. He's pandering to women at the expense of his fellow man for wealth and fame. This is what you are about, Terry Real. And all you guys who say, people say, go to therapy, you can tell them to go to hell. Because this is therapy right here, this scumbag.
No, a lot of the men that I see are what I call wife mandated referrals. And I don't mean to be marginalizing same sex marriages, but the men
Well, they're not important, right? You can't make any money siding out. Like a gay couple, who are you going to side with? Right? They're both the same gender.
see, here's a quote from Terry Real. Shame-based people have pain. Grandiose-based people have trouble.
Huh.
They're not in pain. The people around them are in pain. And they come to see me when the trouble gets so great that either the people around them are dragging their butts in to see me, or the crisis has opened up and they're desperately
Grandiose, I see. So women feel shame and men are grandiose. Every one of us, right?
trying to save their relationship. That's mostly how it goes.
And as I know from reading your work, shame-based people in a relationship are often women in a relationship.
There you go. There you go, guys. This guy's telling a bold-faced lie. Women have no shame. If women were treated like men are in therapy, they would not go to therapy.
Relationship, and then the grandiose-based people are often men. Is that right?
Often, two out of three. Look, here's a maybe more nuanced. And this too is a broad generality, so take it with a grain of salt. But women in our culture, it's changing with feminism, but traditionally, women in our culture lead from the one down, accommodating shame position and have covert grandiosity, whereas men lead from the one up, superior position and have covert shame.
There's nothing superior about being a servant. Real. Your name is actually real. I'm not going to call you by your last name, Terry. There's nothing superior about being a servant.
Mm,
And with women, they're depressed. They're depressed. With men, they're depressed. No, they're not.
right.
They're drinking.
They stuff it down. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So drinking isn't depression. It's a sign of depression. Okay, so this guy's full of shit already.
you don't see the pain. You see the flight into medication or grandiosity that avoids the pain. And so many of the difficulties we think of as quote unquote typically male, substance abuse, rage.
Nonsense. Nonsense. There are all kinds of female drunks and drug addicts out there. And guys, we have in my Discord, we have a whole channel devoted to violent women, and it's filled full and is growing all the time. So this guy is not wrong. He is a liar. He's telling bold-faced lies. And there's no excuse for this guy, right? He's not Gen Z or millennials. He looks like he's a boomer, or maybe he's like me, a Gen Xer. He's a grown man throwing his fellow men under the bus, whole generation's worth, so he can pander to women.
Affairs. I'm not saying all of them are fueled by depression, but many of them are. And underneath the depression is trauma. And the way we traditionally, quote unquote, turn boys into men in underpaid is we teach them to disconnect.
No, no, no. Boys become men through time, period. Just like girls grow into women. But he is admitting something here, right? Teaching boys to disconnect. Well, dude, when this guy is dragged into therapy, you immediately take her side. So you're teaching him to disconnect. Because if he got into, in touch with his real feelings about your bigotry against him, he would take you apart. If men didn't disconnect, they would go nuts from the abuse.
disconnect from vulnerability, disconnect from their feelings, disconnect from others.
The
We call
toxic
that,
individualism. Yeah.
yeah, we call that
Toxic individualism. I'm going to translate. In other words, you have self-regard. In other words, when he's dragged into these therapy sessions, he stands up for himself. Toxic individualism. Right.
learning to be independent.
Hmm.
And the consequence of a disconnected boy
Mm-hmm.
is a disconnected man.
Mm.
We're not invulnerable.
Right.
We're human.
But the boys aren't disconnected. A 7-year-old boy or an 8 or 9, they show vulnerability, they cry, they run to mom. They'll also stand up for themselves as people and say, hey, you can't do that to that little boy because I'm a little boy too. That's unfair. No, it's the men. Once you hit puberty and start, throwing your friends away, like this scumbag, to pander to the opposite sex, that's when you learn to disconnect. If men want to connect, he would have to decide, or come to the conclusion that chasing the opposite sex is the root of the problem. That you've got to prioritize yourself and you've got to let some things go. Otherwise, you become a subhuman like this guy, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
I tell the guys I work with, pretending to escape your own vulnerability is like trying to outrun your rectum. It's
No. I actually read that line in your book and I was hoping you'd say it out loud because it's just too good. Yeah. Outrun your rectum. Perfect.
yeah,
Put that on a shirt, unless you have.
it has a way of following. So no, of course we're all vulnerable, but trying to live up to that superhuman code
Mm-hmm.
leaves every man vulnerable to anxiety.
But it's not a superhuman code. It's not. It's one of servitude, of slavery.
And shame that they then don't admit because that
Also, if he is talking about a superhuman code, we're talking about hyperagency. Men being blamed for things outside their control. This guy used hyperagency on the men who show up at his therapy sessions. There's 2 people involved. He's automatically the one who is at fault. That's hyperagency. So this guy is a part of the causes that make guys disconnect.
would be weak. So the whole thing is just a mess. And the work I do, I say I feel like a surgeon reattaching nerves.
You write about that process in, I think it's your first book, which was about male depression. That book is really fascinating. You write how male depression, as you describe it, often comes from these unacknowledged feelings and is often.
That's dehumanizing. It's not male depression, it's human depression.
And the root cause of many problems in marriages and families. I want to talk more about that, but first,
Marriages and families cause men male depression. Okay. At least she's honest that what marriage is.
I want to know more about why you decided to focus a lot of your practice on working with men specifically. And just to start at the beginning,
But he's not working with men specifically. He's working with women. Remember, these women drag these guys there. That's who he's working with. He's saying to the girls, here's my book. Like I said, keep it under your pillow. Tell your husbands to come over and I'll turn them into a real slave. So he's not working with men. He's working against men.
you were growing up, what did you think it meant to be a man?
I thought what it meant to be a man was to be raging and dominating and abusive like my father.
Okay, he's lying. I mean, raging, abusing, and dominating, right? Maybe his father was like that. Maybe, but this is, if that was the case, dude, this is a personal problem for you. The majority of guys don't have an abusive father. So you got to look at them as the people that they are.
Mm.
And I wanted no part of it. My father used to beat me. I mean, you piss my father off, and he'd get out a pretty thick belt and whack the shit out of you. And one of the things I've realized 30 years after the fact was, unfortunately, my vulnerability or sensitivity was a trigger for my father.
Mm.
If he saw me being vulnerable or sensitive, he would go into a rage.
Well, you know something? And here you are, the product of that, right? You have the power or an opportunity at least to set things right. And what do? You abuse your fellow man. So you're no different from your father. You just take a different route at dishing out your abuse.
Just when I needed him most. But he was very contemptuous of weakness and vulnerability. So
In boys.
he would never talk about his childhood. I knew it was very difficult. He lost his mother when he was 8. His father and he and his brother lived through the Depression in America. His father was kind of the black sheep of the family, couldn't find work. They moved in with another relative. The relative was mean to my dad. And I got my dad to tell me, gosh, I was close to 30, that when he was, what, 11-ish, his father brought he and his brother, younger brother, into the garage and turned on the car and told him to go to sleep. And my father,
So your father lived through the Depression, and Depression had loads of men, male hobos traveling along in boxcars. There were no women there. Right. So tough times are tough on men. So rather than bash your fellow man, you could deal with the tough times, right? But of course, this is neither here nor there to you because you are a dishonest person, Terry. No matter what your father went through or you went through, one thing's for certain. You would be the same guy you are now. You'd be the same guy sacrificing your fellow man to make a buck, to pander to your betters.
knew that there was something wrong. And he went back and forth with his dad and finally physically fought him. And he says his shoe cracked the window,
Mm.
and he and his brother got out. And then he was banished the next day.
When he told you this story, did that change anything about how you saw your father? What did it shift something in your understanding? Did it make you understand something about him?
Yes, of course. It softened my heart. And
Okay, this is bullshit, guys. This has nothing to do with why he tells men that they are automatically the problem. This is his own personal experience, and he knows that does not necessarily equate to the average guy, let alone a majority. Want to skim ahead.
Mm. The way that you opened up space, as it were, encouraged your father to share, was that sort of the beginnings of Terry Real's approach to therapy with men? Like, did you seed anything in that?
No, no, it wasn't the beginning at all. This is all bullshit. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying that has nothing to do with his motivations. This is a selfish, man-hating person.
Conversation that we now see in your practice today?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. We don't have to go into a lot of detail, but for 2 years, Belinda and I and my kids and
Belinda's your wife, yeah.
yeah, a great family therapist in her own right, I want to say. We were followed by a documentarian
So they're a duo attacking men's mental health. Okay.
and there's a docuseries that's coming out about us. And one of the beginning scenes of astoundingly enough, I was 34 years old, not married yet to Belinda, and my parents came for a week of family therapy with me.
Wow. Whoa.
And we filmed it. And the film survived. And what you see, and I hadn't seen it for 40 years.
Wait, was someone doing family therapy on you, your mom, and your dad, or were you doing family therapy on the three of you?
No, someone was doing family therapy with us.
Gotcha.
And what you see is after 10 minutes, I sidelined the therapist, who's pretty irrelevant, actually. And I move in to my dad and mom.
Whoa.
And I am doing relational life therapy with my parents at 34. You see it.
What are you seeing yourself doing?
One of the core principles of RLT is what we call joining through the truth, confronting people, but in a way that's precise and loving.
Mm-hmm.
What are you using gender neutral terms? You were confronting the men and you were telling them that they are the ones at fault no matter what. So there's nothing loving about this. I can call you a bold-faced liar now.
So that they can hear it. One of the things that therapy school says about grandiose people in general and men in particular is, don't tell.
Grandiose people and men in particular. So male means grandiose, right?
Truth to power. I believe my field colludes with patriarchy and protecting perpetrators.
Anyone who uses the term patriarch and patriarchy is a villain. He's anti-male to the core.
I've done a great job of helping people for 50 years come up from shame, but we've been ridiculously ineffective at helping people come down from grandiosity. And I knew.
So he's great at making women feel better, right? But he's terrible at really destroying the male psyche and converting these guys into complete slaves, destroying male self-respect and self-regard. Right.
I knew that I had to do that. So there was a moment with my dad. He started crying. I get it. Forgive me. He talked about his.
Yeah, but what about your mother? Wasn't she involved? Well, what's her problems? Right? Nothing. She's female, right? Her problem was dad.
Mother who died. He talked about his exile. And he started crying and he said, I haven't felt any of this. I haven't thought about this my whole life until you started probing, Terry. And as he was crying, I put my hand on his shoulder and I said,
Yeah.
You cry, old man. Every tear you cry is a tear I don't have to. That was pretty wise at 34.
Watching yourself say those words now 30 years later.
Yes.
Do they have new meaning to you?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Here's my most famous quote. It's the height of pretension to quote yourself, but I will.
You can do it.
Thank you. Uh, family pathology, family pathology, rolls from generation to generation,
But we're not talking about family. You're talking about men in particular. So you're not really talking about family, are you?
like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person in one generation
Mm.
has the courage to turn and face the flames. That person brings peace to their ancestors and spares the children that follow.
Mm. And you were doing that in this moment. You were facing the flames, or your father was facing the flames, or both of you were.
We both were. It
Hmm.
was a rare moment. We both were.
That's a remarkable scene you just shared, and I really appreciate you telling us about it. And it is remarkable. I mean,
Hey, Terry, what happens when a man opens to his up to his wife and she gets disgusted, she gets turned off? Because women do. Then what? I bet you don't open up to your wife.
say it's wise for 34. This is the beginning of your practice. Like you were just starting to develop this approach to working with men. And I find it pretty remarkable that one of the first men you practiced this on, or did this with rather, was your own father. That feels apt and healing and quite difficult.
Apt and healing and difficult. I'll tell you this. I am the son of a depressed, angry father. He was the son of a depressed, angry father.
Yeah, but why? Because his father was what? He was the head of the household. He was the one who was in charge during the Great Depression. So when he couldn't succeed because it was all out of his control, he was nevertheless blamed. And yet here you are blaming him yet anyway. Know what I didn't hear, guys? I didn't hear this guy say, "Well, Dad, all this was out of your control, and it was all under out of Granddad's control." Right? I didn't hear anything like that.
I have two boys, 35, 37. Neither of them say that, and neither will their children. And that is the greatest accomplishment of my life.
Mm.
Well, their children have children. That is, if they're boys, right? Because this generation of young women aren't interested in boys. They're not interested in men. They're not interested in getting into marriage or cranking out babies. So what about them? They're already pandering to women like you, but it's proving to be a failure. So what do you plan on telling them?
Can I ask you, Terry, like as you developed and honed in on this relational approach to therapy and developed this focus, is it right to call it a focus on men, a specialty? Is it right to call it a focus?
Well, he is telling men that they're the problem. So yes, he told you that at the beginning. A stupid question.
Sure. Yeah. No, I consider myself a relationship expert and
Mhm.
an expert on male psychology growth.
As you developed this focus on male psychology, you've talked a bit about the sort of larger therapeutic community, but how did your colleagues respond? I feel like it's just, speaking for me, I feel like it's easy to look at men, especially white men, and say comparatively this.
Why especially white men? What does our race got to do with anything? If it's male psychology, are you suggesting, lady, that there's a different male psychology between the races? Are you a racist?
group of people has way more privilege, as you've noted, than other groups in society. So did anyone say, like, did you ever get pushback on that focus, that sort of, I don't know, privileging, as it were, of that experience?
Uh,
So he focuses on men to enslave them. And this woman is saying that these men that are privileged, which we aren't. That's a lie. That's a total lie. And yet, therefore, he should ignore men altogether. I wish he'd ignore men because then at least he would be doing no harm. But what you're hearing from her is that men should be ignored, period. This is why men suffer the way they do. Terry, you're the expert, right? This is this woman's attitude. Men have problems, fuck them. That's her attitude.
am I mansplaining?
No, I more so just mean, like, did anyone say, like, why focus on this group of people?
Oh,
Wow, you really know your place, you pandering piece of crap. Mansplaining. That's hate speech. And he's the one who even brought it up. So she asked him an insulting question, and he took it right on the chin. What a lowlife.
Who already has so much power. Although what I'm hearing you say is because this group of people has.
Really, his grandfather had all that power, roaming around in the Great Depression, impoverished. What was his great power as a man? He never mentioned his mother, but she's not responsible for anything. She's female, right? And that's not a form of power, is it? Never being blamed.
So much power. That's why I'm interested in focusing on them.
well, yes and no. I mean, power, yes, miserableness also.
Hmm.
I think one of the revolutionary things I said, and I really want to give a shout out to some beautiful early feminist psychologists.
The ones that have the scum manifestos, those. So this guy's a male feminist. He's scum. You're scum, Terry. You're everything that's wrong with humanity.
Folks at the Stone Center, Jean Baker Miller, but most of all, Carol Gilligan, my dear friend, who are man loving feminists. And
There's no such thing. That's an oxymoron. Just because they focus on men and destroy them through psychology, like you, does not make them loving. I guess the Nazis were really loving to the Jews when they were throwing them into the gas chambers.
they, as well, I was really, and to some degree, am one of the few male voices saying patriarchy is a system that does damage to everybody.
Hmm.
No, you're not one of the few voices. You liars are a dime a dozen.
Yes, men are on top and women are on the bottom, but oy,
Okay, it's just a bold-faced lie, dude. I don't know if I can get farther through this, guys. We've reached the halfway point, but this guy is a complete subhuman. I'm going to skip ahead because this is just enraging me. Oh, by the way, guys, this is what you get with therapy right there. Hey, guys, there is something important. He mentions Elon Musk, and I want to give him an answer to the question he gets.
who, but there was an expert on, TV talking about aspirational masculinity and how all these young men are looking at Elon Musk. Yeah, sure, richest man in the world, send people to Mars, fantastic. You want to be married to that guy?
I'm going to answer you. Yes, women want to marry that guy. He's spreading his genes out all over the place. All kinds of women are his baby mama. But that's why guys want to be him, dude. Terry, that's why they want to be him because he's rich, he's worshipped, and women spread their legs for him. And women do get married to him.
Most people don't. And
Well, that's a bold-faced lie again. He he could bribe any woman into his life. I mean, that's what you're doing with your wife, dude, by throwing all your fellow men under the bus. He's got so much more buying power than you. So you can be delusional if you like, but I think you're just lying. Yes, Elon Musk has an endless line of women who would love to marry and then divorce rape him.
if that's what you want to aspire
Most
to,
people don't.
I don't want to get too close to you.
Huh.
Then how do you look at yourself in the mirror? Because that's what you're aspiring to. You're just like Elon Musk, where it counts. You and he both go for fame and status at the expense of other people. You're just like him.
Well, you're bringing up something that I wanted to ask you about, which is like, I'm really curious your perspective on what masculinity means right now. We talked about your early understandings of it, and this is a concept, certainly, I feel like human society has wrestled with since maybe the dawn of human society.
Again, guys, how come there's never ever talk about what femininity is and how women aspire to femininity? And what does it mean to be feminine? Once you consider that, you understand what this masculinity talk is all about. It's to keep you in the grind. They set up like a star for you to go to, and you have no rocket ship. It's just keep jumping up towards the sky. They don't want you to reach a point. They want you continually running and failing.
It does feel to me, though, that we are at a kind of flashpoint culturally, at least in the United States, where men who hold on to traditional values of masculinity are lashing out, they're reasserting those values, they're ascending to power in some cases.
No. They aren't. They're lashing out, but they're not reasserting. The women are keeping those roles. The women are asserting them. This loser here, Terry, if he blubbered to his wife, she'd get sick and puke on him. He follows all the rules that she demands. Women enforce these rules. Women are the arbiters of what masculinity is. And this disgusting subhuman knows it.
Is what are you seeing in the year 2025? What is going on with men? Big question, Terry, but I feel like you're the person to ask this to.
You know, not to be grandiose myself, but I want to take ownership. I am the person to ask this to, and I'll tell you why. There are no models. There are no models of healthy relational masculinity.
Really not. Not a one. So he's discarding everything in the past, right? Well, and he's saying there's none right now. Because if he said one, guys would go for it and say, "Hey, doc, I don't need your therapy. See, you showed me what I'm supposed to be doing." They don't want you to know. There's nothing to know.
None.
Yeah. And boys and men are floundering. Everybody knows that. But
No. They're not floundering. They're under attack. Guys, this is for you. You're under attack. This is one of the people attacking you.
look, Someone described my work as women have had a revolution and now men have to deal with it. The response
Women have discarded men, and men have to deal with it. And I agree with that. Men do have to deal with that. We have to come to terms and just accept. But that means we have the opportunity to move on and actually evolve out of what losers like this guy is. This guy hasn't evolved at all. His idea of dealing with this so-called revolution is that he says, okay, they're the masters, I'm the slave. What do I have to do to remain in the house instead of being relegated to the fields?
to the challenge that women are presenting to men in their marriages, in the job market, in education.
In the job market, there are quotas for women in the job markets. Women are grabbing up all the easy, clean office jobs. They dominate publishing and the HR. Women aren't having any problems in the workplace, dude. And much more, you know it. What's it like to be you? What's it like to have no soul and to be completely sold out?
Has largely been blowback, a resurgence of the most traditional and, frankly, unappealing aspects of traditional patriarchy. Just
Really, then, how come there's so many trad wives, Terry? How come there's so many women that got into careers and then they dumped their careers and got married to a man and became housewives? The men didn't force them to do that. Men didn't force them to give up their career. They're the ones who dumped it.
dominance and bullying. That ain't it. And so I don't want women to stand down from their demands. I want men to stand up and meet them.
Mm.
There you heard it in a nutshell, guys. Uh, Women don't, they have demands, whether they're appropriate or not, and men have to meet them, right? Exactly. This guy just admitted what he's about.
What women are asking for from men.
They're not asking. You just said they demanded. Now he's going to tell you a lie. What women are demanding is subservience. It's a complete, you know, I'm missing the proper term or word, which annoys me. But basically, giving up entirely, whatever the proper word is.
Is relationality.
Acquiescence. They're demanding a complete acquiescence of men's autonomy to them.
Is learning to be intimate, is opening up your heart and sharing your feelings, being vulnerable.
Okay, we've tackled this many, many, many times. You know what you're saying is bullshit because women ditch men who open up and show vulnerability. That's why they like them strong and silent. Strong and silent. In other words, men never show weakness. They never show vulnerability. That's what women say they want and how they act they want. That's what they want. So here you are, knowing for a fact what female psychology is about, and you're telling men to do the exact opposite of what they need to acquire access to women. So your lead shoes. Your tax your thumbtacks on the racetrack.
Being soft when your partner's vulnerable, being responsible. These are all wonderful things for guys.
Responsible for what, though? Responsible for what?
Stop whining and let me teach you how to do it.
Be vulnerable, but stop whining.
And the conundrum for men is what you learn
Guys like you.
about what it means to be a strong man as a boy guarantees you'll be seen as a lousy husband as a man. You cannot be invulnerable and intimate at the same time. So when I
Well, there you go. Women don't want men's intimacy. They save their intimacy for their fellow women. That's who they care about and respect. That's why you're pandering to your wife. That's why you're pandering to women you don't even know, dude.
help men move into open-heartedness, connection, the expression of feeling, compassion, responsibility, giving. I name this with, I'm explicitly reconfiguring masculinity with them.
I mean,
He's explicitly putting slave collars on men and making sure they either don't get with the girl, or if they are married, they get divorced that much quicker. Terry here does not do that with his wife. He wants to stay with her as long as he can. And therefore, he does not show vulnerability to her. He's the stoic guy who keeps his mouth shut.
talking about these models of masculinity, and I'm thinking about the models that are out there right now, especially kind of ascendant ones that are very different from what you're laying out. I'm thinking specifically about the manosphere, as it's called. These are podcasts, YouTube channels, online forums, influencers that are really pushing traditional masculinity. Do you ever see that kind of stuff? And what do you feel when you do see it?
If they're traditional, how are they different from the past then?
You want my mature therapeutic self or you want my New Jersey self?
You can give me your New Jersey self.
Either way, you're going to be a scumbag.
I want to throttle them.
And what would the therapeutic self say?
People with simple ideas will not have a hard time getting an audience. But
these aren't your ideas aren't complex, dude. Yours is very simple, and so you're wrong. What's really going on is actually you're wrong about the manosphere. The manosphere gets lots of views from men. So you're just demonstratively wrong. My channel does not get a lot of voices, a lot of views, right? The truth does not get lots of views. And that's why you do get a lot of views. That's why women buy your books.
these are carnival barkers who are leading our young
Look who is talking.
men down the path of suicide.
Mm.
You know the TV show Adolescence, right?
Yeah, it's big right now.
And all the press it got. You cannot reassert your masculinity through dominance and bullying and violence.
Oh, really? I'm going to let me stop just for a minute, guys. Just for a minute. Here's a video from Nate the lawyer, and it all talks about how this female lawyer, who's a looker, ended up getting together with this homely criminal. The reason she did is because he's a criminal. He's not good looking. He doesn't have money. He's a criminal. That turned her on. So you were just blatantly wrong about that. Women love bullies. In fact, I have a video saying how women go for bullies. Let's see if I can find that one. Well, here we are, guys. Bullies are sexier and have more dates. Take that, nice guys. This is in my importance videos that you can see. They found that out. So you guys think that this this therapist who's been a therapist for 40 years or 30 years, whatever, isn't aware of that female psychology? Of course he is. So not only is he blatantly wrong, he's blatantly lying. This is who you're putting your mental health in, whose hands you're putting into, right? A man who is a blatant liar, a gaslighter. You show up at his office, you're the one who's in the wrong. You haven't even heard the story yet, doesn't need to.
That is not the answer. It's just not.
Apparently, if you want to get laid, it is.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Terry reels hope for the future.
Okay, he's not for hope. Okay? This guy is making sure your future is hell. Don't go anywhere near these terrible people. If I had my way, guys like him would be behind bars.
We'll move into something more mature and nuanced. The issue is, how many generations is that going to take, and what kind of shape will we be in? What I work with the guys I work with is what I call learning to become family men.
Learning to become family men, right? Right. And maturity. We'll see what that ends up being by his measure, right?
And what I say is, a boy's question of the world is, what do you got for me? It's gratification. What do you got? What do you got for me? A man's question of the world is, what do you need? What do you need?
So a man is servitude. What is a woman's? Hey, Terry, what is a woman's? She doesn't say, what do you need? You'd call that patriarchy. So this is this guy's, mindset in a nutshell. Boyhood is self-regard. Manhood is servitude. Worse than servitude is slavery. It's like, I don't consider myself at all as a human being. Women are what's important, whatever they want.
And being a family man means what's central here is not you and your needs. What's central here is the team and what they need from you.
Yeah, but if you're part of a team, you get something out of it. So your needs have to be met. Otherwise, it's not a team. This is common sense 101. I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
I talk to many of the men I work with about the distinction between gratification and what I call relational joy. And gratification is just what you think it is. It's a short-term hit of pleasure.
What are women sacrificing? From your attitude, women are all about self-gratification. It's always the guy who's wrong. These women aren't expected anything. They don't get to say, what do you need, to someone else. Okay, I'm sorry I went this far. This guy, I'm not going to waste any more time in the last 7 minutes. This guy is a scumfuck. Don't go to therapy. This is what therapy is for you. Guys, it's the destruction of your mental health. This man wants to kill you, but causing you a physical death, it's not enough. He wants to destroy your soul. He wants to destroy your mind and then leave the physical stuff to you. Understand what this guy is about.